For today's Science Fancy, let's talk about bacteriophages and how they led to one of the first great novels of the culture of science. This is a rendering of a bacteriophage, which is a virus that attacks bacteria and bacteria only. They carry DNA up here, then they shoot it into the bacteria that they're trying to infect. Apparently, each liter of seawater has billions and billions of these bacteriophages, and from the bacteria that they infect, they release 3 gigatons of carbon from the seas each year. Phages are also darlings of the laboratory, according to this article reviewing the Good Virus book. They were used to prove that DNA is the vehicle of genetic transmission, and the first full sequencing of anything ever done was of a bacteriophage. But how were these tiny little things ever discovered in the first place? There's a real story of that, but what I want to talk about today is Arrowsmith, the novel by Sinclair that fictionalizes this scientist's discovery of bacteriophages. This book came out in 1925, just when there was a big movement towards a standardized medical practice and science became a more glamorous thing in the eyes of the public. The book was notable because of its scientific accuracy and how this scientist figured it out. And it turns out Sinclair was helped by Paul de Crefft, who was a science writer. And he got 25% of the royalty sales, even though Sinclair was the only one listed as the author. The book follows the story of Dr. Martin Arrowsmith as he goes from small-town America up through the echelons to a research lab in New York City. But he loses that position after insulting his mentor and goes to work in a small town. But eventually a plague breaks out on an island and he goes there to help. The climax of the book comes when Arrowsmith discovers a phage that destroys bacteria. While on that island, he refuses to give the phage to people who are sick with this bubonic plague because it's not been tested well enough lately. It takes until people close to him die that he starts abandoning his scientific principles and simply treating people because it seems to work. He returns to New York City a hero, but refuses all the appointments offered to him, and instead abandons his wife and infant son to go become an independent researcher in the woods of Vermont. And that's one of the things I remember liking most about this book. It was honest about scientists as people. Arrowsmith was not a good guy during the course of this book. He often cheated, he was not kind to the people around him, he was very self-centered and focused on what was best for him and for his way of doing science. That being said, it worked and allowed him to help all these people dying of the bubonic plague. It points to something that you see so often in the scientific community, people who are excellent scientists, but their moral development doesn't match up. So this was a very cool, fictionalized look at the discovery of the phage. And now phages are being looked at again as a way to treat viral diseases, as a way to deliver drugs into the brain, and perhaps as a material to use on antibacterial coatings on hospital equipment. Some of the labs in the formerly Soviet countries like Georgia have been using these phage therapies for decades with a good amount of success. However, there are some risks to that type of therapy. For instance, there are certain bacteria that don't become pathogenic to humans until they are infected by a phage. So this arena of phage science is experiencing an upswing right now, which would have been appreciated by Dr. Martin Arrowsmith.